Listen closely. Do not adjust your audio levels. What you are hearing is not a recording of a fabricated ghost story or a long-lost urban legend. This is the raw biological telemetry of a human heart beating 400 kilometers above your head. It is beating inside a pressurized lead-lined capsule that was officially declared vaporized during a catastrophic R-7 booster failure in July 1964. They were known in the innermost circles of the Politburo and the Soviet Space Agency as the Silent Orbiters. They were the phantoms of the space race, men and women whose names were systematically scrubbed from every birth registry, military roll, and family tree. Launched from Site 31, a ghost facility in the Kazakhstan steppe that does not appear on any Soviet map, they were sent into the void not to explore, but to serve as biological sensors in a domain that humans were never meant to inhabit. Officially, these missions never occurred. Officially, the rockets were ballast tests, filled with lead plates and canine remains. But the Ash Relay Station, a clandestine listening post buried deep in the Siberian tundra, has been tracking 6 distinct biological signatures for over 60 years. 6 pulses. 6 rhythms of life that should have expired decades ago. One of them just started responding in a modulated frequency that is no longer human. Archive Room 9 contains the physical remains of what the Ministry of Defense attempted to incinerate during the frantic collapse of 1991. Among the charred edges of Case File K-47 lies the dossier of Cosmonaut 0. No birth name is listed. No military rank is recognized. The file contains only a set of orbital coordinates that defy the laws of traditional Keplerian physics. According to the internal logs, Cosmonaut 0 reached stable orbit on April 12, 1962, the exact same day the world celebrated Yuri Gagarin as a hero of humanity. But while Gagarin returned to become a global icon, Cosmonaut 0 was instructed to remain. His mission was not to land, but to stay. To watch. To listen to the impossible silence between the stars and report what lived within it. In October 1962, during the terrifying peak of the Cuban Missile Crisis, a frequency was intercepted by the Judica-Cordiglia brothers, 2 amateur radio operators in northern Italy who had built their own listening post. They didn't hear a state broadcast, a patriotic anthem, or a standard distress call. They recorded a rhythmic, heavy, labored breathing. It was synchronized perfectly with a low-frequency pulsing that seemed to emanate not from the capsule's radio transmitter, but from the very void surrounding the craft. The brothers described it as the sound of a lung trying to breathe vacuum, a sound of biological struggle that had no end. The signal was suppressed by international intelligence agencies within 48 hours. The operators were visited by men in gray suits who spoke languages with no identifiable accent. Their tapes were confiscated. Their equipment was dismantled. But the data remained as a phantom in the static of the atmosphere, a ghost in the machine that Department Theta has spent half a century trying to decode. Why did the Soviet Union abruptly terminate the Vostok and Voskhod programs when they were clearly winning the race to the stars? Why did they pivot so suddenly to orbital stations like Salyut and Mir, which seemed more like fortified bunkers than scientific laboratories? The answers lie in the classified logs of the Ash Relay. On June 14, 1967, the Siberian station recorded a transition that changed the nature of the mystery. Capsule K-47 stopped transmitting traditional radio waves and began emitting what the technicians called the Ash signal, a concentrated burst of high-energy gamma radiation that pulsed in perfect time with Cosmonaut 0's heart. Look at the declassified telemetry recovered from the 1984 signal burst. The biometric data recovered by our deep space arrays suggests a physiological impossibility that contradicts every known law of biology. The occupant's internal body temperature is constant at precisely 4 degrees Celsius, the exact temperature at which water reaches its maximum density and its most stable state. Their blood is no longer circulating in a traditional sense. It has become a ferrofluid, reacting with violent precision to the magnetic pulls of the Earth's ionosphere. Physically, according to every medical textbook on this planet, Cosmonaut 0 is dead. They have been dead since the oxygen scrubbers failed in 1965. Biologically, however, they are waiting. They have ceased to be a pilot and have become a component, a transistor made of flesh and bone. In the mid-1970s, at the height of the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union engaged in a secret collaboration known as Project ORPHEUS. This was the true, hidden objective behind the Apollo-Soyuz test project, a public handshake in space that masked a desperate, high-stakes retrieval mission. The objective was to intercept capsule K-47 before its decaying orbit brought it over the continental United States and exposed the anomaly to the public. But the mission reports, hidden under triple black encryption, reveal a terrifying pattern of failure. Every retrieval craft that approached within 500 meters of the silent orbiters suffered catastrophic, unexplainable systems failure. The pilots of the Soyuz 19 reported a heavy physical silence that seemed to leak through the lead-lined hull of their craft like a thick liquid. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was a sensory weight that caused immediate psychological hemorrhaging and temporary blindness. One colonel, whose name remains redacted to this day, claimed in his final debriefing before his disappearance that he could hear the heartbeat of Cosmonaut 0 not through his headset, but in his own teeth. He felt it vibrating through his jawbone like a tuning fork. He described the capsule not as a piece of machinery, but as a chrysalis that was slowly hardening and changing color in the intense radiation of the Van Allen belt. The paradox we face in Department Theta is chilling. These capsules have had no functioning life support systems for 60 years. There is no pressurized oxygen. There is no thermal regulation to protect against the 200-degree fluctuations of orbital space. There is no food, no water, no possible way for a human organism to survive. Yet, the 6 heartbeats continue, echoing across the vacuum in a perfect, terrifying hexad. Internal memos from Department Theta, dated as recently as November 2019, suggest a hypothesis that the scientific community has refused to accept. The silent orbiters are no longer the occupants of the capsules. They have been integrated. Their neural pathways have been rewired and repurposed by an external frequency, a signal originating from the Boötes void, a place where no stars should exist. They are no longer human beings. They are biological antennas, husks used to stabilize a gateway that our instruments cannot see, but our ancestors might have recognized. Consider the data from Archive 9 regarding the echo mirror experiments. In 1972, a secret research team attempted to simulate the frequency of the silent orbiters in a controlled laboratory environment using a human subject. Within 3 minutes of exposure to the 4-degree resonance, the subject began to speak in 3 different voices simultaneously. None of the voices belonged to the subject. They spoke of a great weaving and of the necessity of the anchors. The experiment was terminated when the subject's heart rate synchronized with a pulsar 3,000 light-years away. The subject was never recovered from the ensuing catatonic state. What are they transmitting? And more importantly, who or what is listening? The technical logs of the Ash relay suggest that the orbiters are not sending data out into the universe. They are acting as anchors for something coming in. On July 19, 1994, during the Shoemaker-Levy 9 impact on the planet Jupiter, all 6 heartbeats stopped for exactly 60 seconds. During that 1 minute of absolute silence, every seismic sensor on Earth recorded a microtremor of exactly the same magnitude. The planet itself reacted to the silence of the capsules. When the heartbeats resumed, they were faster, more urgent, as if a countdown that had been running for eons had suddenly entered its final, most critical phase. Yesterday, at exactly 3:14 a.m., the heartbeat of Cosmonaut 0 stopped again. This time, it stayed silent for 12 seconds. During those 12 seconds, every digital clock in the Ash facility drifted backward. Analysts reported that the very air inside the facility became cold, smelling of ozone and ancient dust. Then, the pulse restarted. But it was no longer alone. It was now perfectly synchronized with the other 5 silent orbiters in a mathematical pattern known as a hexagon cluster. They are no longer 6 separate entities orbiting a planet. They have merged into a single orbital network, a biological processor the size of a planet's orbit, built from the suffering and the frozen cells of men we abandoned to the dark. The final blood-stained pages of the Archive Room 9 dossier contain a desperate warning from a lead scientist who vanished without a trace in the winter of 1992. He wrote in his final entry, "We thought we were sending pioneers into the heavens to claim the future. We didn't realize the heavens were hungry. We have unwittingly provided the nervous system for something that has been waiting outside our atmosphere for eons. The capsules are no longer tombs for the dead. They are eggs for the unborn." The latest telemetry data from our deep space tracking stations show something even more disturbing. The orbits of the 6 capsules are changing. They are no longer decaying toward Earth. They are actively positioning themselves into a perfect geometric formation, a massive hexagon positioned directly over the northern hemisphere. The heartbeats are accelerating beyond human limits. The ash signal is no longer a faint whisper in the static. It is a scream in the radio spectrum that is beginning to drown out our most advanced satellites. It is a broadcast of arrival. The archive suggests that when these heartbeats stop permanently, the transmission phase ends and the manifestation begins. We have spent 60 years looking at the distant stars, wondering with childlike curiosity if we were alone in the universe. We should have been looking at the shadows between the stars. We should have been listening to the rhythmic, frozen breathing of the men we left behind in the cold. Cosmonaut 0 is no longer waiting for a rescue that will never come. The broadcast has reached its final sequence. The anchors are set. The gateway is stable. And we are not prepared for the entity that is about to speak through the silence of the capsules. Listen. Can you hear it? It's not in your ears anymore. It's in your bones. The countdown has reached 0.